Se presentó Jesús en medio de ellos, les dijo, la paz esté con ustedes.
Then we'll start with the name Delores Mission. It's obviously not one of the California missions, but it's called a mission because it was a mission of a bigger parish. It was their outreach to the poor. So it was the outreach of St. Mary's Parish, which is just up 4th Street, probably less than a mile away. What we don't know is if they put a chapel down here so that the poor didn't have to walk all the way up the hill, or if maybe they put the chapel here so that the poor wouldn't walk all the way up the hill. I wasn't here 100 years ago or whatever when they made this a mission. But we can presume and hope that it was for the best intentions, and it was to give the poor in this community a chapel without having to walk up to it, what at that point would have been a very upper middle class community. The name Dolores is from the word, the name in Spanish, Nuestra Señora de los Dolores, Our Lady of Sorrows. Our Lady of Sorrows is another name for Mary, the Virgin Mary, but it's specifically Mary at the foot of the cross, watching her son be crucified. So that's what we think of when we think Our Lady of Sorrows. Translated in Spanish, Nuestra Señora de Dolores. So we're the mission of St. Mary's Parish, named for Our Lady of Sorrows. I'm a Jesuit priest. The Jesuits have been in charge of this parish since the mid-1980s, early 80s, mid-80s. I don't remember the exact year. We work for the diocese, but at this particular church. So it's a diocesan parish. Everything's owned by the Archdiocese, but we've been missioned to serve this community, specifically here at Delores Mission. So since then, it's been a Jesuit parish. In its early years with the Jesuits, it was very active and committed to social justice ministries. We saw that really clearly even more clearly when Father Greg became the pastor. And that's probably closer to the late 80s. It's around the same time that the church became a homeless shelter, and that was in response to the great need in the community, specifically to welcome Central American refugees, people fleeing the wars in Guatemala and El Salvador. So in the early years, it was that kind of a response, and it's remained a shelter every night since then.
En sus manos la señal de los clavos, y si no meto mi dedo en los agujeros de los clavos, y no meto mi mano en su costado, no creeré. 8 días después, estaban reunidos los discípulos a puerta cerrada, y Tomás estaba con ellos.
Well, my experience actually started in the mid-60s. I attended this elementary school. Came to this church. I did my first communion, confirmation, everything at this church. The priests and the nuns were like second parents.
And no one can ever take me away from Delores Mission or have me go to another church, because this one will be, and I will always stay here for the rest of my life.
This is life at Delores Mission.
Your input on I guess the socio-economic, cultural difference between why 9 a.m. is different as opposed to the others.
The Spanish-speaking community mostly lives right around here. The English Mass, a fair number of the people live in this community or did at some point, or are children or grandchildren of somebody who lives here or lived here. But we also get a lot of people who come to the 9 intentionally from other places because they're looking for what they think Delores Mission stands for. So knowing that we're a homeless shelter, knowing that this little church always tries to speak loudly about rights and issues of justice, that this church often puts itself on the forefront of standing up and speaking for people who can't always speak for themselves. That's a real draw to some people. They look for that in their church, and so they've found that here over the years. There are also people who grew up in a Jesuit parish somewhere else in the country, or went to a Jesuit school or university and feel an affinity to the Jesuits, so when they moved to LA and started their careers or whatever, they looked for a place that felt like where they had been. So we get a lot of people who come or visit because, you know, they know the Jesuits somewhere through their history and they've chosen to come here to see us. So the 9 o'clock community the English community is very much a part of the community. But in terms of the feel of the liturgy and things, it can feel a little different because a lot of people come from further away. While at the Spanish Masses, we do see people coming from all over, but there's still a large group that lives here in the housing projects in the neighborhood that we're a part of. I don't know, for people of faith, for me at least, it's hard to imagine living your faith without doing good works, without living your faith. It means putting into action what you believe. And if we truly believe in the great mercy and love of God, then we want to share that with others. And so Delores Mission clearly exemplifies that. This community has been very blessed by the love and support and accompaniment of people from all over. And the people want to keep paying that forward. So we reach out to our sisters and brothers in this community in great need. We welcome the homeless into our community as family, as they are. We reach out to families who are suffering with all kinds of emergencies or crises. We have special groups here in the community. You know, we kind of really work with the victims of violent crimes. So we have a special group for the survivors of violent crime. So once a month we'll have a special mass, and you know, the first 6, 7, or 8 pews are filled with people who have all lost someone to a violent murder. Another Sunday during the month, we'll have kind of the families of the incarcerated here. And so the first several rows will be families of people who have family members in jail. More often than not, people don't want people to know they have a family member in jail. And so they hide in the shadows. And here we invite people out of the shadows, and we recognize them for who they are, our sisters and brothers, and we love them and support them in their struggle. And on special occasions during the year, we'll bring the survivors group together with the families of the incarcerated and watch the amazing work of God's mercy.
Walking through LA.
Yeah, Our Lady of the Way.
Yeah, it looks like she's almost like traveling into.
Exactly. What that reminds us of is Mary on journey. Mary, you know, the Holy Family, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, fleeing Herod. You know, Jesus was born. The wise men tell Herod that they're looking for this king, and Herod says, "Well, you know, when you find him, come back and tell me. I want to go honor him too." Well, the wise men are told by the angels that don't go back to Herod, he wants to kill the king. And we know what Herod did. He then ordered the death of, you know, every male child under 2 years old in the region, trying to kill this king that was a threat to him. So we have to think of Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus fleeing, leaving land they knew, leaving people they were loved and supported by, and going elsewhere, crossing borders, going into other lands without documents. Oh my goodness, how could this happen? You know, undocumented aliens fleeing death, trying to find a place for, you know, of life and hope for their child.
Right.
And so that picture very clearly shows Mary and the Christ child on a journey from, you know, if you see behind her, there's an image of a little village, which looks like could be anywhere in Latin America, a little church in a village in Latin America. And if you know downtown Los Angeles, you see in the image that Mary and the Christ child are coming to downtown Los Angeles. So for the people of the community, that picture recalls their own journeys. You know, whether it was theirs, their parents, or their grandparents. For most of the people in this community, we've all come from somewhere. And it's a reminder that God and, you know, Jesus' mother, our mother, has made that journey with us. It's a beautiful image, and if you look at it, the artist is pretty good. He was a Jesuit priest who worked here. He's now deceased. But her arm doesn't look like it's a natural placement, and you wouldn't walk around with your arm that way. But what you need to imagine is yourself standing in front of the arm and Mary embracing you on your journey, or my journey, or your journey, so that, you know, when we truly realize that wherever we are in our own personal journey, that our God goes with us, that's a pretty powerful That's a powerful truth.
What I learned here is, if you want something, you can get it. First of all, you need to have schooling. Whatever you want, school will give it to you. And I tell my kids the same thing. 2, you have to have God in your life and the fear of God in your life. Without those 2 things, you're nothing. But it makes me feel good that you're here. Really, really. By the way, my name is George. Jorge Estrada. Jorge Estrada. And it's good to see all of you here. Really, really.
So my experience at Delores Mission centralized around the idea of family and values, community. So when I met this couple from Compton, the father stressed to me the values of having a strong presence in your children's lives, because he didn't grow up with a father figure. So when his children were growing up, he wanted to make sure he had a strong presence in their lives. And so when they came to Delores Missions, they saw this idea of family and values and community.
So when we went to visit Delores Mission, this was actually my first time going to a mass, and it was really cool. It was such a casual setting, you know. Everyone, you know, you didn't really need to dress up, you didn't need to look nice. You can come as you are, sort of feel. And it was just so warm, so welcoming. And one of the key things that I remembered was that when they asked for prayer requests, literally anyone can just say what they needed. And that was such a cool experience because, you know, it's the community bonding together, talking about their needs, talking about things they need help with, and that way they can support each other through that.
Father Ted spoke about the growing gap between the rich and the poor, which is something that's come up a lot in class this semester. And he talked about how the low-income people of their community are just willing to give as much as they can, even more than they should. And then you've got the rich who are holding on to everything as tightly as they can. And it just made me realize why this gap is growing, because the poor are giving more than they can, and the rich aren't giving near enough.
So one of the really cool things this church does is that they have a venta, which is essentially food for all the visitors that come. But what they do is that they have families cook the food. So these are families that need financial assistance in a plethora of ways, whether it be for rent or if there was a death in the family, they need to pay for a funeral. Instead of the church just giving them money, the church provides them with an opportunity, saying, here, if you cook food for the people that come here and you serve the food, then you can take whatever profits you get. And it was really cool and super delicious.
Delores Mission, we had the opportunity to talk to a younger couple just about like the different models that work in reducing poverty. And one of the models at Delores Mission that really stands out is like their asset-based development model. If anyone in the church comes forward with a suggestion or they see a need, the church will back them 100% and allow them to start up this program and just provide financial support. So for example, they had a homeless shelter in place for men, but there wasn't one for women. So they were able to start a women's homeless shelter a few blocks down the street.
So Delores Mission is one of those places where it embodies everything that we've learned in the course thus far. It's a place where every parishioner that we talk to calls home. It's kind of the centerpiece of their community. It's where all aspects of the community kind of function out of. One might be led to believe that would cause dependence on it, but what we saw was that all these people that don't have high income, they find wealth in what the church can provide for them in the form of community.